All right, so generally when you are editing for the first time, you are going to plug in your hard drive, and you do want to have some organization. Organization is going to make your life a lot easier when it comes to editing. Just like people who have planners, they definitely know where they're going, or a calendar. Same thing with good organization on a hard drive. Most hard drives, if you plug them in, if they are already formatted for a Mac, you can go and say File, New Folder, and then it will allow you to create a new folder. If you plug in your hard drive and it does not allow you to go File, New Folder, it means that your hard drive is formatted for a PC, and I can load instructions on how you can format it for a Mac. Now, if you are a person who is PC at home, but we're Mac here, yes, you can partition your hard drive where it's half Mac, half PC, or 70-30, 60-40. It's up to you. The only thing I would caution you is that generally they do not communicate cross-platform. You can't plug the PC into the Mac and have it work. The other thing is if you think about it, I would probably honestly format it all Mac, because you're going to be here and have other classes after this. If you go into multicam, you're going to be getting hundreds of gigs of footage out of multicam. You're going to get lots of footage for your other classes, and especially if you work on other films. So it is advantageous to probably have it formatted all Mac. However, you do not have to. If you really want to have it formatted part, PC, part Mac, that's definitely an option. Mine is just formatted for Mac, because I know I have a lot of footage. So when you get your hard drive, you're going to want to plug it in, and you're going to want to create a folder and call it Adobe Premiere Documents. So that way you know that's where all your Adobe Premiere items are. Within that, you're going to want to create different folders based on what kind of project you're working on. So for this first assignment, you could always create a folder and call it Assignment 1 or Narrative 1. So that way you know what it is. But within that folder, you're going to need to create some subfolders within this folder. What are some folders that you might need to help keep yourself organized with a project?
Video and audio.
So I can make one and say video. I can then make another one that says audio. And audio could be music. Some people I see will break it out and even have a folder that says music. It just depends on how much audio you have. Like if you're doing a short film or a feature-length film, maybe you're going to have a folder that says music, even though music is audio. Anything else folder-wise? What I would also create is one called exports, and then I put, when I export a file and it's done, it's finalized, it's outside the program, I will put it within a folder called exports. And then if I know I'm going to make graphics, like maybe I'm doing a documentary and I need lower thirds that has information about who those people are, or I have a really interesting graphic open for my short film, I might make a folder that's called graphics. Not graphics, graphics. So those are just some of the stuff that I would consider doing. Some people will call it raw footage. Video is fine. It's the same thing. I mean, it's your video. So these are just folders that I would create on your hard drive. And creating these folders is not enough. You actually have to use the folders. When I've helped students with some projects, they don't utilize the folders, and then we have problems finding where their footage is and connecting it to the software. So you want to keep things organized, and you want to do it early, because if I do not put my video into this video folder, then when I move it into the video folder after I've been editing, the computer is not going to know where it is, because the computer is always going to link to that initial place where you put the video. Now you don't have to freak out. There's an easy way you can just file reconnect media. But it is going to probably freak you out in the beginning, because it's going to come up saying media offline, and you won't see any video, and students tend to freak out. So you always want to start organized properly, but if you don't, you can definitely file reconnect your media. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up Adobe Premiere, talk about the workspace, and I'm going to show you some basic editing for audio and video. So we're going to go ahead and open up Adobe Premiere. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You do have a shortcut on your desktop. That's what this little black arrow means. If you ever move your footage or your files around and you see this little black arrow, that means that that is not actually a file. It is a link to something. So if you ever turn in a video file and it has that little black arrow on it, it means that I cannot grade it because it's only a link to where that file is. And if I don't have the actual file, I can't open it. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on Adobe Premiere, and it's going to go ahead and open up. All the Adobe Premiere within our department should be the same version. So if you edit in here versus another lab, you should be okay. However, if you have like an older version at home and then you come here to edit, when you open up that project, the computer is going to give you a message saying, hey, this is from an older version. We're going to save it as a copy because it's going to be from a newer version of software, which is fine. But what error are you going to run into if you try to go back and edit at home? It's going to be unreadable because the older version cannot read the newer version. A newer version of any software can read the older version, but the older version cannot read the newer version. So that's something to keep in mind. If you notice that when you're at home, you have like the 2017 version and we have the 2018 version. If you come here and edit, you will no longer be able to edit at home at all. So you need to be careful when you're editing. This is taking a long time.
Yeah, it took mine a really long time.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. So, I guess we'll talk about, oh, there it goes. Adobe Premiere is what we call a non-linear editing software. What does non-linear editing mean?
You can do it in any order, almost.
You can do it in any order. Back in the day, they used to edit what they called tape to tape. They would have two tapes in different players, and you had to do in and out points and edit it in order. It could not be edited out of order. With this software, I can edit the beginning first. I can move the beginning to the end. I can pick up and move things around into different locations, and that's why it's called nonlinear editing. The other thing about this software that you need to be aware of, you will be doing what we call non-destructive editing. What do you think that means? Or if you know what that means, what is non-destructive editing?
Oh, you're not damaging the original file. You're not changing the original file.
Correct. Sometimes it's even context clues. We're like, okay, non-destructive, destruction, destroying. So you are not going to actually edit the original file. You are making these edits within the software. However, if you ever go to your hard drive, external hard drive, you'll notice that the footage within your video folder is always going to look like it still came from the camera. It's not going to have the color adjustments or be cut up into tiny pieces because this is what we call non-destructive editing. So the first thing we're going to do when we open up Adobe Premiere is we are going to create a new project. So we're going to go to New Project, and there's a couple settings that you have to be aware of on here. Otherwise, it's going to cause extreme headache for you. When you log off in this lab, essentially everything is going to be erased and disappear, and it's going to be like you were never here. If you do not set these settings properly, you will save all your files to the computer. When you log off, they will disappear, and you will have to start over from scratch. This does not happen when you edit at home if you use Adobe Premiere on your laptop or if you want to get it on your computer. This will not happen. You know, your computer is not going to delete it. But here it's set up that way so that way we don't have too much stuff on the computer. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to name it. You want to make sure it's a name that you understand what it is. So I can call it Narrative 1 if I want, or I can call it Assignment 1. You do not want to put the number symbol in there. Certain symbols like that can often corrupt different files, so you want to leave out like @ symbols, number signs, cash signs. So we're going to name it, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to choose a location. So right now this is telling me it's under Users, JCM Students, Documents, Adobe Premiere Pro 11.0. This means that if I leave it here, when I log off, I will not have my project file and I will not have anything that I did. So this is a very important step. So we're going to hit Browse. And Browse is going to allow you to pick your external hard drive. So now I can go to my external hard drive, to my Adobe Premiere Documents, Then I can go to my narrative 1, which I'm going to just go to my basic editing tutorial because that's where I'm going to function, and I'm going to say choose. Now you're going to see it's telling me it's going to my hard drive. I can tell because it has the name of my hard drive and that it's going within Adobe Premiere Documents and my other subfolders. Other things that you want to be aware of is down here, capturing. We're not going to be capturing, but if you ever needed to capture footage, you would probably want it on your HDV because that's high def, unless you're capturing from an old tape. Scratch disks is the other tab that you want to look at. Scratch disk is telling you where it's going to save your captured video, your audio, your preview, and all the things that you're going to be utilizing or that are created when you're editing in your project. You can leave it same as project, and it will create these other folders within your project folder, which is great. So I'm going to just leave it same as project. Generally, this is going to, pop up as save as project, so you don't need to necessarily worry about it. But I like to check it to just make sure that I definitely have it going to save as project. If I wanted it to go to another location, I could just hit browse like we did with changing the location and change the location. So now that I know that everything is saving to my external hard drive, I'm going to go ahead and press OK. Like I said, I know some of this is going to be review for some of you, but there are definitely generally a vast majority of students who have not edited in Premiere. So we're going to have to talk about this and then get into some editing. Throughout the semester, we'll add in a little bit more of editing, but right now we're just doing the basics. So if you've done this before, maybe you might learn a couple teeny tiny new things. So this is your workspace. This is Adobe Premiere Pro. Often students get confused and are like, oh, I can't see a certain menu when we're doing a tutorial. The one thing I will say is always ask questions. Unfortunately, I'm facing a wall, so if you need to, do not raise your hand. You can just holler and say, hey, I have a question, or hey, I can't find that. It's okay to even interrupt me a little bit if it's like a question about trying to be where we are, because if you get behind in this tutorial, it's going to be difficult often to catch you up. So don't be afraid to ask questions. There's other people in this class who probably have the same question as you. They just might be afraid to ask it. So go ahead and ask the question. I mean, that's what teachers are here for. We're here to answer your questions. But sometimes when I'm in a tutorial and I might say go to a menu, which is up here in the top, just like your menu in Microsoft Word, some students won't see it, and that's because they are not in Premiere. If you look up here, now it looks like I am in Premiere because I can see the window, but you can tell I'm not in Premiere because up here it says Finder. They might have accidentally clicked on the desktop and they can't find the window or the menu that I need them to go to. So to get back into Premiere, it's just easy, click on it. So if you ever need to know where you are at or if you're in the software, you can always look up in the top left and that'll show you that it says Adobe Premiere Pro CC, so I am in Adobe Premiere. So a couple things about the workspace before we start bringing in footage and making some adjustments. If you look up here, this is where I call the menu, or everyone calls menus, file, edit, clip, sequence, and you'll see that some things are grayed out because we have no clips in and we don't have the option to do it, but you will once we bring in clips. These are called your windows and your workspace. Up here is your source window, and you can see because it says source. Over here is your program. Down at the bottom is your project or browsers, and it has different tabs that you can click on to look at different things, like if you want to add audio or video effects and transitions, or do some color correction. Over here is what we call your timeline or sequence. Your timeline is where you build your project together. And over here on the right are your audio meters. Now, if you look up top of the workspace, you'll see that we're in editing. You have different modes based on if you're doing different things. I personally tend to function in editing like 99.9% of the time, but that's a personal preference. That does not mean that you cannot edit in any of these other modes. Like if you're doing a lot of audio work and you're editing audio, it makes sense to go to audio, and then it's going to bring up the different things that you can utilize when you're editing audio. If I go to color, it's going to make it so I can see different items that I needed for color correction. I can get to those items in the editing, but I'm not going to have the same workspace look. So these up here will change what it looks like when you're editing. Like assembly allows you to bring in and see your files a little bit larger. So some people like to do the assembly when they're looking at the clips and they're assembling and putting things on the timeline. But then when they get further into editing, they like to go into the edit mode so they can see the videos a little bit larger. I tend to function in editing mode, but that's just a personal preference. So these, you'll see that things will definitely change. So if we're ever doing a tutorial and you don't see the same workspace or the same look that I do, you probably have a different option up here on the way it looks. So I'm going to go back to editing at the moment. I guess I'll go to assembly so you can see. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to be organized also within our project. So one thing you can do is you can actually create folders within Adobe Premiere. However, Adobe Premiere does not call them folders. If you've edited in Premiere before, what do they call it? Bins. So if you go up to File, New, you can go to File, New, Bin, and I want you to create these bins. You can also just hit Command B, which is this little hotkey over here, you can see. If I hit Command B on the keyboard, it's going to create a new bin. So Command B. And now I can label it something. I can call it video. I can make one that's called audio. I can make one called music. So you want to also create bins in Adobe Premiere to keep your stuff organized. Otherwise, you're going to have lots of stuff just everywhere. So again, it's File, New, Bin, or Command B. Sometimes when I do tutorials, I'll go a normal, what I would consider a normal speed the first time, and then I tend to go back and do it multiple times in case you need to see it again. So just an FYI on how that's going to go. I can also right-click on the empty area, and you'll see I do have the item to say New Bin. So there's several different ways to do things in Adobe Premiere. Just because I do it one way and you do it another way, or another person does it a different way, it doesn't mean we're wrong. It just means we have a personal preference on how to do something. So I can make another one if I wanted for graphics. So you just want to think about the folders that you need to keep your items organized and make sure you put stuff within those folders. Now, there are a couple different ways on how to import clips. One is you can be in your project mode. I can open up my bin and I can actually right click on it and say import. Another way you can say is File, Import, or I like to use the hotkey, which is Command I. So if I hit Command I, it's not, oh, it is working, it's just my computer is having a case of the Mondays on a Wednesday. Goodness gracious. Some things that can slow down your Adobe Premiere is if you do not have a lot of space on your computer available, like memory-wise, as well as your hard drive. So it could be that we, oh, Jiminy Christmas. It could be that we are running out of memory. It could be the issue, but I don't know. And, okay. So now it's going to bring up a window where you can actually start importing footage. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in some footage from your, oh, you might have to put it on the desktop. All right, so we're going to have to, I forgot, with this computer I'm used to functioning on a hard drive. So if you need to hide Adobe Premiere to see other things, if you hit Command H, it hides Premiere. It also will hide InDesign, Photoshop, and now we can go and drag video from the class data to your desktop. So I forgot that it won't let you directly import from there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to your class data, you're going to go to JCM, then you're going to go to My Name, and we're going to function with we'll go with achromatic. It's a short film that a student was working on in Mississippi from one of my classes. It actually won at a film festival. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Achromatic No Audio. We're going to drag those clips to the desktop, and then we'll eventually delete those. So if this was your memory card, there's actually a slot in the back of the computer on the right side, and you can put your memory card or your SD card in there and drag items off of your SD card onto your hard drive. Remember, you always want to take the files off the SD card because it's going to allow you to then always have those files on your external hard drive, and that way if you delete your files off your SD card, which you're going to want to so you have space, you'll always have those files to edit. So although we're doing this to the desktop, because not everyone has their hard drives yet, you would essentially be taking these files off your card and putting them into your folder, your video folder on your external hard drive within your project folder that we made, like we did at the very beginning. The other thing I want you to grab is this hula hoop song. It's one of the songs I could find on my hard drive. I don't think I have a lot of music on here. I may have put... I did not. I thought I put Around the World on here. Let's see if I have it. All right, anyone have any issues moving those files? All right. I guess we don't have it. All right. So we need those video files from Achromatic, and you want this hula hoop song, so I can show you how to import music. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Adobe Premiere, and you can do that by clicking on the PR in the bottom in your dock. This is called a dock. You can also minimize the dock by going up to the top and pulling down if you want. Now we can go back and let's import. So let's go Command-I, and you can navigate to your desktop. And then we can click one file or we can click multiple files. And the way you can click multiple files are a couple different ways. If you click on the very top and you hold the Shift key and you click on the very bottom, you will see it will select all. You can also click with the Command key and pick individual files that you want. So it's kind of up to you, but we want to go ahead and import all of these files. So we're going to say import. You can also import folders, so you don't necessarily have to create a bin. So you'll see now it says video, 7 items. Another way, like I said, is if you want to import a folder that you already have created, so you don't have to create a new bin, you can go to File. They used to have import folder. I guess they don't have the, I guess the update, you can just import the actual folder. We're not going to do that because this is a big thing. But back in older versions, you actually had to go between File, Import File, or File, Import Folder. But now it looks like you don't have that problem. So if you look at your files, you can adjust how they look in your window. If you look at the very bottom, you'll notice you have one that has squares and lines, one that has just a big square. These squares and lines are going to give you these purple film-like options. You're not going to be able to see what the file looks like. However, if you click on the icon view, you definitely can see what the file looks like. And this little circle allows you to slide it and make the files larger in case you want to see what the files look like in a larger format or a larger viewing. You can also create and change the name of it. So if you click, so like you click, wait a split second and click again, you'll notice it allows you to highlight the name and I can change what it's called. So I could change it to a different name if I wanted to. Because when you're shooting on your card, it's going to come in as like a DSC or a different name with numbers, and this allows you to, again, stay organized. You don't have to go back and rename all your files. I just did this so I knew which ones I was importing for the tutorial. But you definitely can change the label for your clips. If you need to move clips into bins and you didn't actually import it into the bin, you could just simply click, hold, drag, and drop, and it will be there. There are other ways to look at footage. Say I already have footage on my external hard drive. You can go to Media Browser. I can pick my hard drive. I can then go to my folder. I can find my folder, and then I can pick the files and see them here. So if you already have them on your external hard drive, you can go to Media Browser. But if you do it on project, they'll always kind of be in this project window as opposed to you always having to go to Media Browser. But there are two different ways that you can view files to edit for your project. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create a sequence. There are different ways to create a sequence, and we have to think about the format. And when you're creating a sequence, the way to know what kind of format you need to utilize is what you shot your video format on. So this is where being technical comes into play. You have to know, did I shoot it on 24 frames? Did I shoot it on 30 frames? Because if I try to put a 24 frame video on a 30 frame sequence, it will not play properly. It will not be the proper size. It will not look good. So you do need to be aware of what you shot when you were using your camera. So there are a couple ways to create a sequence. One is you can go up and say File, New, Sequence, or Command N, and it's going to bring up this window. And you can see here, unfortunately, it's defaulting to DVNTSC, which is a smaller frame size. You can see it's 720 by 480. That is not a 1920 by 1080, which is our widescreen format. So you'll see that, like we talked about in our camera tutorial, there's the AVC HD or the MP4. They actually have settings for an AVC HD. And there are different folders you'll see here. There's 1080i and there's 1080p. What is the difference between 1080i and 1080p? Does anyone know what the I stands for?
Isn't that like diagonal or something? I don't know.
It's called interlace, and P is for progressive. And there is a big important thing that you need to know about these two things. Again, you have to think about where your video is going. If you are uploading this to the web, you want it on progressive. It is how the lines of your video are scanned. Let's see if we can find something on the internet to show you. I stands for interlace. Interlace is what format I would use if I was going to put it on TV. So say you make a documentary and maybe CPT, the Center for Public Television, finds out about it and they're like, we love your documentary, we want to put it on TV. If you bring them a progressive formatted file, QuickTime file of your movie, there is no way in God's green earth that file is getting on TV. And you just maybe missed your big break. It has to be interlaced. P is for progressive scans, and that is for the internet. And then interlaced is for if you're doing television. Let's see if there's a better video than that. Oh, bless. This is a 5-minute video. Ooh. Maybe we'll look at this and see. Oh, great. Look at all that text. It deals with how the different lines and frames of your video are together. This one is a terrible video. I keep forgetting that interlace and progressive is not standard, but skip. Blah, 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 blah. We'll go over that a little bit later so we can stay with the editing, but you do need to be aware of progressive versus interlace. We are not going to use AVC HD, but you'll notice that they even have it for different cameras. Like if you have the joy of using a red, you can actually pick the red and what settings you used it on. The other thing that's nice that Adobe Premiere did for you, they don't have our, they have MPEG 2. The other thing that Adobe Premiere did is they realized that not everybody is always the most technical person in the world. So the first time you drag any clip to the timeline, it will format a sequence based on that clip. So if you know what you're doing and you know what you shot it on, you can go to File, New Sequence, and pick it. However, if you just want a quicker way or you don't remember what you shot it on, if you take a clip and you drag it to the timeline, click, hold, drag, and drop, it will format the sequence for that clip. Now, if you're a person like we saw in that little mini documentary of the guy, the swimmer with the wheelchair, she had different footage. She had cell phone footage, she had GoPro footage, she also had footage that she shot on her camera. Whatever is going to be the most dominant type of video that we're going to see on that sequence is the one that you want to drag to the timeline first.
Question.
Uh-huh.
Did you end up clicking 1080p or 1080?
Nope, I just canceled it out to show you the other way.
Okay,
Sorry. No. Don't need to say you're sorry. Holler at me, ask me questions. I appreciate it.
Woo.
Because I'm sure somebody else was like, and what do I do now? I didn't see what she did. So I'm loving the questions. So what I did is I canceled out to show you this method because students tend to like it better because it's quick. You just drag, drop, and it formats it for you. But again, it has to be whatever clip you're going to use the most. So generally, until you get to your documentary where you might use photos or a tiny bit of cell phone video, maybe from something that you need from the past, you're going to always want to put whatever's going to be the dominant amount of your video on there. So that would be whatever you shoot on your school camera or your DSLR. So now you'll see I have a sequence, and it is formatted for the type of video that I shot with this camera, which is nice. So there are several different ways you can import to your timeline. So now that we've kind of already brought our clips in, I like to go to the edit mode. So I personally am going to go back to the editing mode. I like this workspace better, especially when I'm editing clips and putting them on the timeline. I just did the assembly so that way you could see the importing the process a little bit larger. So let's go ahead and click on the editing. So now you're going to have your source window and your program window. And you'll notice at this point you only see a video in the program window. And that's because the program window shows what's on your sequence. And this blue line and this thing that looks like an arrow or like an upside down house icon, this is what we call a playhead. A playhead shows one frame of video. So wherever this playhead is on my sequence is what I see in my program. The source window is when I'm looking at and viewing clips that I'm editing to put on my timeline, or where I go to make certain types of edits. So there's a couple different ways you can move your playhead. What are some ways we can move our playhead, those who've edited in Premiere?
You can drag it.
You can drag it. So you can click hold on the playhead and drag it, and you can see the video moving. What's another way I can get this playhead to move?
L and J.
Yeah. Oh, yes. The door opened. So another way you can play it is if you look at your keyboard. You guys actually have a really fancy keyboard. Generally, this is not the kind of keyboard you're going to have. I definitely don't have this at home. But you'll see that you have a rewind on J, a pause on K, and a forward on L. If I press L one time, it's going to play at real speed. If I press L multiple times, it's going to play at a fast speed. If I press K, it will stop. Or you can press the space bar. The space bar key also lets you play, or it lets you stop. So sometimes when I'm in YouTube, I'm so used to editing, I'll hit space bar and then nothing happens and I get confused. But when you're in Adobe Premiere, space bar will play, space bar will stop. If I hit J once, it will rewind in normal speed. If I hit JJ fast, it will rewind in a faster speed. If I want to stop, I can hit spacebar. So those are the different ways that you can play your playhead. You can also play your playhead by hitting the play button up here in the program window. Bless you. So multiple different ways that you can get the playhead to move, to change, to see different parts of your clip. So that's how you can play a clip. Now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create, bless you. No problem. It is that time of year. What we're going to do is we are going to delete this clip. The way you can delete a clip is you highlight it. There's a couple different ways to highlight. I can click on it and it turns a white and it's highlighted. You can also draw an imaginary box. Like if I have to select multiple clips, I can drag an imaginary box and it will highlight all those clips, and then I can hit the delete key, and now that video is off my timeline. What I'm going to show you how to do is how to adjust the length of a clip, how to bring a clip onto your, again, back onto your sequence, and then how we are going to make some audio edits with that music that we came in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my project folder. I'm going to double click in my bin, and now I have my video. So I'm going to give you a little backstory on this. The initial scene that she started with, some people in the class were confused why. The reason she chose to start with the long shot is because it is establishing, it does give you a sense of place. But when she shot it, she ended up having the text of her video up here, kind of introducing the film. That's why there's this empty dead space. So normally when you're looking at your footage, you want to think about where you want to start from. And today what we're going to do is we're going to start from this long shot. So to edit how long this clip is, we need to double click it. When you double click it, it allows you to then have it up in your source window. And the source window will allow you to then create a shorter or a longer clip utilizing what we call in and out points. So the first thing you have to think about is where your playhead is. This is the duration of the clip, this whole area. And my playhead is already kind of in the middle of the clip. If I want to go to the beginning, I can simply just drag the clip, or the playhead back to the very beginning. And then now I can figure out where I want to start my in and my out points. There are a couple ways to create in and out points. So if you look up here, I'll show you and then I'll do it. My favorite is the hotkey. I'm really big on hotkeys. It saves time and having to move your mouse. But this is an in point, so I can press here and put an in point. I can move my playhead down later, and then I can press an out point, and that would be the duration of my clip now. So you can see the highlighted area is what I have between my in and my out point. Again, this is non-destructive editing, so it really has not shortened this clip. If I wanted to adjust where the in and the out points were, I could just simply adjust it up here, or I can adjust it on my sequence later. So that's one way that you can create in and out points and make an adjustment. If you look up here, I'm going to show you how to create in and out point adjustment in another way. It's my personal preference, does not have to be yours, but this is the way I like to edit, is this next way. If you ever need to get rid of your in or your out point, or both points, if you look at your keyboard, you'll see you have the Option key. If I hit Option I, it gets rid of my in point. And when you have no in point, the in point is always going to be the very beginning of your clip. So if you're going to start at the beginning of the clip, you don't necessarily have to put in an in point. If I want to get rid of my out point, I can hit Option X, and it gets rid of my out point. However, I'm hitting Command Z to go backwards. The hotkeys that you use in Microsoft Word to cut, copy, paste, and undo, and save, and do File New are all the same in Adobe Premiere. So what are the hotkeys in Microsoft Word to copy? Control-C if you're PC, Command-C if you're Mac. Cut, copy and paste. Cut is X, paste is V, undo is Command-Z, one of my favorites. And Command-S to save. Those are my favorites are Command-X and Command-S. So now I have, I did Command-Z a couple times to get back to where I had an in and an out point. Instead of having to go Option I, Option O to get rid of the in and the out point, you can simply hit Option X, and that will get rid of in and out point. So Option X will get rid of your in and your out point. All right, so now I'm going to show you the method that I personally like the best. I like to use the in and the out point using the I and the O. And if you look on your super awesome keyboard, it even shows you that they look kind of like those icons, not entirely. So if I hit the I at the beginning and I hit spacebar to let it play, then I can hit O wherever I want it to be. Now I will tell you we need it to be when he's sitting down because we're going to try to edit a little bit of a sequence together. Now I don't know about you, but this is taking a little bit of time. So what I would do is what I call marking on the fly. You can mark while it's playing in real speed. Like if I wanted to put O here, it's O. If I wanted to change it, I could just hit O again, and then you'll see the out point can change. So you can do what we call marking on the fly with your I and your O key, or your in and your out point buttons. Marking on the fly simply means you can mark while it's playing, and if you need to adjust the out point, you can just hit O again, and the out point will move to where that is. Now that took a little bit of time. If I am crunched for time, and I know there's no dialogue or anything going on here, what I can do is I can hit play and I can hit LL and I can play it at a faster speed. He got there, he put his leg up, he's talking to her. Now I can put my out point. What's the question? I can answer it. I can help.
Like I put all the video stuff in the assembly part of Premiere Pro, and when I switch to editing, it doesn't pop up and I can't find it.
So assembly is just the way you're viewing the project. So if we go to editing, you might not see it because you might be in media browser or you might be in the project and you need it to be in one or the other. Did that help?
Yeah, it was I didn't even see that there.
Yep, yeah, no problem. It's great when you ask these questions because maybe you don't encounter this issue now, but maybe you encounter when you're editing on your own, and then you're going to have that answer. So I really appreciate you guys asking the questions in class. So basically, I want you to adjust your in and your out point, and then we're going to click, hold, and drag and drop to the timeline. The other way you can drag to the timeline or get your clip to the timeline is if you look up here, I'm going to show you these buttons real quick. And then I'm going to I'll review it again, and then I'm going to let you edit for a while on your own. We did the drag and drop method earlier. The other way you can do it is if you look up here where my mouse is, it says insert. It also says overwrite. These are two buttons that you can press and it will automatically jump it down to your sequence or your timeline for you. The only issue is, and I need you to watch because this is an issue students will have happen and then they freak out and they think their computer is out to get them and being crazy, when in all actuality it's just an operator error. So this is a common thing that can happen to students, so please watch so you don't freak out later. If I hit overwrite, watch what happens to my playhead on the sequence. It always jumps your playhead to the end of the clip, which is great. Because if I hit overwrite again, it's always going to overwrite the clip to where that playhead is. Now the problem is when students sometimes are maybe trying to review what they've put on the sequence, they might leave their playhead in the middle of a clip. And if I go and I do another clip where I have maybe her looking at her cell phone, and I then hit overwrite again, it's going to overwrite it where I left my playhead. So when you're editing, you have to be very conscious where your playhead is on the timeline if you are going to use the overwrite or the insert method of getting your items to the timeline. If I hit overwrite again, you're going to see it's going to delete this half of this clip and say I needed this clip. If I just hit overwrite, it's going to disappear. And now I only have the girl on the cell phone. I don't have that end of that clip. It's going to put it on the end of it over here, which is a problem. So don't freak out if you see this happening later. It's probably because you weren't paying attention to where your playhead was. Some students like to avoid that by simply just doing the drag and drop method. Just drag it to the timeline and drop it. That's completely fine. There are definitely right ways to edit, but there are definitely choices that you can make when it comes to editing. The other option you have is what we call an insert edit. An insert edit means that you can actually pick, let's pick a totally different clip. We'll do this shot of this guy looking. And now she's on her phone. All right, so maybe I need to insert this clip between two clips I already have. If you have lots of clips on the timeline, let me just make more clips on the timeline. And I need to insert the clip between a couple clips. Some students will just like draw the imaginary box, then move all the clips over, then put the clip back in there, and then move everything back, or do the ripple delete, which is clicking in the space and then saying ripple delete. But the other thing you can do is you can use the insert edit, which is this other button. You'll notice that it has a clip, and a clip is going in between another clip and it's moving over. If I put the insert edit, it can push the clip in between those two clips without me having to drag everything down the timeline, then drag everything back, or hit the ripple delete. So there are multiple ways to get your clips to the timeline. So I'm going to review those again. I'm going to review the in and out point, how to get items to the timeline, and then I'm going to have you look at these clips and kind of edit them together for a little bit, and then we're going to make some other edits within the software. So again, if I am creating an in and an out point, I can go to my clip, double click it, which this is why I personally do the media browser method. I will usually just go to media browser. I'll go to my Adobe Premiere. This is how I tend to edit. I don't tend to edit in the project folder as much because it usually will open up that other folder and it drives me slightly crazy. So I'm currently on the desktop. So I'm on my Macintosh. I am on user, JCM student. I am on my desktop. So now this is why I personally like using the media browser to look at my footage, because if you're in project and I double click a bin, it opens up the bin into another folder, which I am not a big fan of, but that's just a personal preference. I tend to like to use the media browser so I don't have to have it keep opening and closing, opening and closing. So I'm going to go to that long shot. I'm going to put an in and an out point. So again, to clear in and out points, I can hit Option X to clear both, Option I to clear in, Option O to clear out. I'm going to hit spacebar to let it play so I can mark on the fly. We do need him to get down to where he's at least sitting down and his leg is up, or at least he's sitting down, because then we're going to be able to try to connect it to another shot that they have. Again, you can also hit LL to make it go faster, spacebar to stop, and I can hit O, or if I want to hit spacebar and let it keep going, I can hit O again, and then I can bring it to my timeline, either with an overwrite, which means it would overwrite here, not at the very beginning of my timeline, or I can simply drag and drop and let go, and now I have a clip on my timeline. Any questions of that before I turn you loose? I want you to edit at least 3 clips together, and I'm going to show you how we can then adjust to make sure that we don't have jump cuts. Now, normally, I would probably not necessarily start with this shot because it's not what I would do, but knowing her intent was to put and she did, put the text here to know what the film is and also give you some context like we talked about in our shot composition lecture. So what I want you to do now is then look at the footage. You might have to go through different footage to see which one you want. And you can play it in real time, or you can simply drag your playhead to make it go faster, or use the L key like we talked about. So again, I want you to edit 3 clips together on the timeline. Try to look at the body position. So when I'm on my sequence, I can jump to the end of my clip so I know what my last frame is. Go to your sequence real quick because I want to teach you one quick little trick that if you've edited in Premiere, you probably know. If you're on your sequence like I am right now, if you hit the up arrow key, it goes to your in point. If you hit the down arrow key, it's supposed to go to your out point. So right now it's black, but if I hit the left arrow, it will go left 1 frame. If I hit the right arrow, it goes right 1 frame. Flame. So up arrow goes to the very beginning of the clip, down arrow goes to the end of the clip. But if I need to go back 1 frame, I can hit left arrow to go back 1 frame, right arrow to go forward 1 frame. Now I have some context of what I'm looking for my other clip. Sometimes you might need to go back and adjust the out point based on what your next clip is going to be. When you're dealing with free actors means that sometimes they're not always going to have the correct body position. So maybe I want to cut to a shot of her here. You don't have to have it where he is walking in the whole way. Maybe you cut to a closer shot when she's looking off to the side, but she's not holding her phone yet. This is when the phone rings. So look at these clips. I'll give you a little bit of time to look at these clips, and I want you to edit together 3 clips on your timeline. Pay attention to their body position, because that will let you notice if you have a jump cut. Sometimes you might need to adjust your out point. There's a couple ways to adjust your out point besides in the viewer. If you already have your clip on the timeline, if you take a second and look up here, you'll see that if I move my arrow to the end of my clip, it's going to have a bracket with an arrow pointing towards the clip, or a bracket arrow pointing towards if I had another clip. This is one method you can use to adjust your in and your out point. This is what we call trimming. You're trimming your clip after you've already made your in and out point. Maybe I need to end it before he puts his leg up. I can click and hold when I have my bracket with my arrow and pull back to the left, and you're going to see I can change where my out point is. And I can do it before he pulls his leg up, if that's where I need the out point to be. If I need the out point to be further down, I could pull to the right. But you can only pull as far as that clip's duration is. So I can't pull to the right anymore because that's how long the clip is. If I want to move the clip back because I need maybe the out point to be somewhere else so I don't have a jump cut, I can just pull, and this is what we call trimming. So any questions before I let you, and I'm going to walk around and answer questions if you have questions, but I want you to edit at least 3 clips onto the timeline. If you've done this before and you want to edit more clips on there because I'm going to give a decent bit of time to people to do this, that's fine. But when you first start out and you're green at editing, it is not uncommon for it to take an hour or more to edit 1 minute. Okay, so keep that in mind. Basically, I was asked, does it matter where we put this on the timeline? There's so much of this software, honestly, I could spend a whole semester teaching you really cool stuff in here, but we already got a lot going on. So when you put stuff on the timeline, it only matters in a sense that if I put this clip on top, it's going to cover up what's beneath it. So that's, in a sense, yes, it does matter a little bit. So like when we're doing our documentary, we'll have our person being interviewed here and our B-roll up top. Generally, you're going to want to keep it on the same video line and audio line. So generally, I'll just function on video 1 unless I need to have it to where I think I need to make some adjustments. That's just my personal preference, but if you want to edit where you have maybe 1 clip here, another clip on the bottom, that's fine. But the nice thing is if you have them both down here on the same line, say I need to adjust my in and out point, there's actually a tool called a ripple and roll tool. I can actually click between them. If I have my roll tool, I can click between these two and adjust both in and outs at the same time. You see up here? So 1 clip's getting shorter, 1 clip's getting longer, and this can help you avoid jump cuts. So in a sense, I would say I would keep all my videos on video 1 because I know future things I'm going to teach you, it will make your life easier if they're all on 1. You're not going to have access to the ripple and roll tool if you do not have them on the same line. Okay, to drag and drop, I should have clarified this. This is my bad. I didn't say it. I just did it. You have to click on the actual picture and then drop it. You don't want to click on the in and out point because it will only move your playhead because that's in this little area down here. You have to actually click on the actual video. The other thing you can do is, if you look up here, you'll notice that there is a video clip and an audio clip. If this clip had audio and I only wanted to drag the video, I could click on drag video only and it would drag the video only. If I only wanted to drag the audio, if it had audio, I could click on the audio and drag the audio. However, if you need to drag both audio and video, you're going to want to click on the video, the actual video, and drag and drop. If this clip had audio, which I edited it out, you would have audio down here because you dragged the actual video down here. When you do overwrite and insert, it will also bring the audio with it if it had audio. Great question. So one thing that I noticed when I was walking around, some of you were worried about jump cuts. And like we saw on here, unfortunately, sometimes her leg was not in the right location for the other shot. So sometimes then you have to think, is it better for my pacing to cut this in and maybe people won't notice, or do I really want to make sure I'm staying and avoiding jump cuts? One thing that can help you avoid a jump cut, if you have a slight issue in maybe the speed at which he's sitting down or how he's sitting down, or if you're doing like a fight scene, later we're going to edit together a karate fight scene. If you edit on the action, like while they're moving to sit down, not when his butt is in the seat, because if his butt's in the seat and then in the next shot I see him kind of shift his body like he was still going down, I'm going to see that very easily. But if you edit while he's kind of going down, but not down, people are not going to see it because you're editing on the action while it's happening, and generally then people don't notice it. And you'll notice that a lot if you start looking at action films. Look, they're editing on the action. They're not editing when the fist hits the face. They're editing when the fist is flying at the face, not when it contacts. Sometimes I do, but generally those are different stylized things. So we're going to try to see about him. He's already down on the on here, so that makes it difficult. I have an issue because of her leg. Ugh, driving me crazy. So he's already kind of butt going down as opposed to sitting already. So I would just want to make sure butt going down. At least his arm is decent. So he's a little bit off right there. Then I can trim my clip and I can then put my in point here. I can then play it forward and I can put an out point. So it's important when you have not shot this and you're just the editor to go through the clips, look at the log of the clips. Now I'm going to go ahead and overwrite this down to my timeline and I can check it. After you make an edit, you always want to check it because it's easier to fix that issue right then as opposed to editing down like 5 or 6 clips and then going back and watching. So whenever I make an edit, I personally will go back before that edit and watch it. So I was just eyeballing that, but we're going to see, you have to think about the pace at which he's sitting down, the position of the body. I can already tell you the hand where one was higher, one was lower. But again, when you're dealing with people, this is not even an actor. The guy in the coat was just a friend who agreed to be in the film. But since he's moving, it's more difficult to see that maybe the arms are not in the proper location. Yes, you can use the trim tool to trim things. But I want you to look up here because there's some issues when you try to do the trim tool. There's something called snapping. Snapping means it will snap to the next second space. You can see it's snapping over here. It's not letting me do tiny micro movements. And that is because snapping is on. Snapping, you can tell, is on because this magnet is blue. If I hit the letter S, I can turn snapping off. And you can see now snapping is not on because it's not blue. Or you can simply click on the icon or click it off. Now when I go trim it, and the only way you can trim on the sequence is if you have the move or selection arrow selected. So you have to have this arrow selected in order to trim. I can click, hold, and drag, and now you can see I can make tiny micro movements as opposed to where it snaps to that next second. There are definitely advantages when you might want the snapping on. There are definitely advantages in situations where you might want the snapping off. So aside from trimming that way, if I trim this way, say I needed to, which I'm not because it looks bad, but then you have this empty space. Instead of dragging the clip over, if you select the dead area between the two clips and hit the delete key, it does what we call a ripple delete. It will jump the clip, the endpoint of this second clip, to the out point of this first clip. So I'll do that one more time. If you have dead space between clips, maybe you trim something because you like the trim method. If you click on the empty space, you can get to the ripple delete, and I can hit the delete key, and now it ripple deletes, it moves it over, so that way we have no dead space. Now I'm going to go back because that edit would make me have worse of a jump cut. The other way you can adjust your jump cut is by adjusting the out point and the in point of these two clips, or simply selecting another clip that maybe the action matches up better. Or what's the other kind of clip you could put in between if you know you have a jump cut?
A close-up, or an overlay, or, I don't know.
Depending on what the close-up is, it could. We talked about it for your first assignment in the lecture, a cutaway. Maybe there's, I don't know what I would want to see other than these two people there. Maybe something else like a car driving by and water splashing, I don't know. But there'd need to be a reason. Otherwise it would just be kind of like, why did I just see that random car? So the other way is using the ripple roll tools. If you look at your tool palette here, you'll notice that different tools have a little triangle on the bottom right corner. What that little triangle means is that if you click and hold, there are actually tools behind it. And this is something that you'll see also in Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator. They all use that little triangle thing. The ripple tool allows you to adjust between two clips, but it doesn't allow you to see them move and roll together where you're adjusting both. So if I'm going between two clips, let's go ahead and go down to your third tool. 1, 2, 3. If you hold your tool, your arrow over a tool, you'll see a little window pops up and tells you what it is. So let's click and hold, and we are going to edit the roll way using the roll tool. So it's the one with the 4 arrows. This means it would adjust your video and your audio if there were audio. If you put that tool with the double-sided arrows, oh man, we have got to get that projector in focus. I would have a headache if I had to look at that all day if I were you. Bless it. We are going to click, and if I click and I hold and I pull, you're actually going to see both videos at the same time. So maybe I'm like, well, maybe I should not do it when he's sitting down. I should do it when he walks in the scene. Either way, it's really a crotch shot. So either way, I don't know. So I could do it maybe when he's walking into the shot. However, as we've already discussed, we know that her legs are crossed differently in both shots. We're still learning the tool, though. So maybe I want to have it this way. And then now I can go back and play it and see if I like it. Now, this will work if your clips are matched up. If you have a jump cut in the fact that maybe one clip is a little bit early, one clip's a little late, the ripple tool would be better than the roll tool. So this double-sided arrow is great to adjust in and out points if those clips have already matched up and there is no issue. If you have an issue with a clip, the ripple tool is better because it allows you to then shorten one clip. And then, unlike the trim tool, it jumps it, you can see, back to where it's touching the other clip. So the ripple tool is similar to the trim tool that we can use with the selection tool that we went over before. But the selection tool, then you'd have to click in the dead space and hit delete. The ripple tool allows you to make an adjustment, like say one clip is off and I need to just maybe make an adjustment where the in point is so it matches up to the other out point better. So I only need to adjust one clip is when you use the ripple tool. If you want to adjust both clips, that's when you use the roll tool. So if I needed to adjust this to a different location, I can pull it maybe here, and then I can go back and check it. So after I make an edit, I'll go ahead and check it. So again, ripple tool is for adjusting one in or out point to make it match up better with the clip in front of it if you have it in a sequence. If you just need to adjust the in point because it's, you know, a different shot, that's fine as well. The roll tool, which is the one with the double-sided arrow, This will allow you to adjust something where they already match up, if it's in a sequence, or if it's different clips, that's fine. You can use this, but it'll adjust the out point of one clip while adjusting the in point of another. Whereas this one, like we just said multiple times, but just to help you, will adjust the out point of one or the in point of another, and it will delete the space. Again, it's like the trim tool, but it will delete the space when the trim tool does not. So the next thing we're going to do, and the more you come in and edit and play with it, the easier it'll be. Does that make sense? I know I explained it multiple times, and those of you who know it are probably like, 1 is good, but if you've never heard it before, 3 or 4 often helps. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to import audio, and we are going to put our music in here, and then we are going to also move some clips around so you can see how to move clips. All right, so what we can do then is, again, normally you would put the audio file in your audio or music folder, but I gave you that one music file. It was a free song on iTunes, so that's why I downloaded it, because it was free and I could use it for a tutorial. It's an AIFF version. Do we have iTunes on here? We should have iTunes on here, right? iTunes. Let's go to applications. Most Macs come with iTunes, so I'd be surprised if we did not have it. There we go. So what I want you to do is actually open up your iTunes. So we're going to go to a new Finder window, and you can hide Premiere by hitting Command-H. You can open up a new Finder window by going to New Finder Window. Then you can click on Applications, and then you can go to iTunes, and we're going to open up iTunes. The reason I'm showing you this, yeah, sure, we agree. Totally. Yeah, sure. Sometimes you're going to have audio that you need to reformat in order for it to play properly in Premiere or to go with your sequence settings. We're going to drag and drop this hula hoop into iTunes. So again, you're just going to go to your Finder. You can get it down here as well. Go to your applications, open up iTunes, agree to whatever they said. It's not your computer. We're not doing anything crazy. Then we're going to click, hold, and drag your hula hoop song into your iTunes. Your hula hoop song is a .aiff version. But if we need to reformat it, we can actually reformat it in Adobe Premiere, or excuse me, in iTunes. So once you have your song in iTunes, you can reformat it. Has anyone used iTunes to reformat songs? Okay. Haha, one new thing today for at least some of you. So we're going to go to the iTunes menu up top, and we're going to go to Preferences. Up here, there's this, I haven't updated my iTunes in forever, so it's not the same as my one at home. Wah, wah, wah. Let's see. Mine usually comes up under General, and it's, oh yeah, here it is. Mine just looks different because I don't update my iTunes like ever. Down at the bottom it says Import Settings. So when you're on General, which is the tab that comes up when you open it up, if you go to Import Settings, it's going to allow you to change what it imports it as. You can import it as an AAC encoder, which is actually the format you use for audio for Vimeo or YouTube. So I would personally do it as an AAC encoder. But maybe you needed to change it to an MP3 or a WAV or an AIFF. You can change it. We're going to leave it on AAC encoder because we know that's the format we will be exporting it out to if we're putting it on YouTube or Vimeo. So we're going to say, okay, this is why it's important to know where your files are going, because where your files are going to be played at, where they're going to be viewed at, will definitely change the format of your audio or your video. Right now we still have this one song though. If you right click on it, oh yeah, this is a newer version. Haha. You don't have to right click on it. The newer version, you can go up to File, Convert, and then it will create an AAC version. If you're like me and you haven't updated your iTunes in a long time, you can right click and it will convert it. So we'll say right click, convert AAC version. And it's going to beep at you that it worked. And then now you can hear this super awesome free song. All right. Now, the problem is we have to have this on our external hard drive, correct? Otherwise, when you log off, this file will not be there and you can't use it. How are we going to find this file?
Put it in your audio folder.
Huh?
Put it in your audio folder.
Yeah, but how do I find where this file lives?
See location.
You can go up to your file, show in Finder, so that way you do not have to know where this lives and go into like this folder, this folder, this folder, this folder. If you have that new song selected, you can click on File, Show in Finder, and then I can see that, oh, this one's MP4. Mine said AIF, AAC encoder. That's odd. Convert to AAC version. That's weird. And that's what my preferences say. AAC encoder. All right. Yeah, it's okay. So it is AAC audio. I can go up and say File, Show in Finder. Then I don't have to go through all these subfolders. I can then click it. So yeah, this MP4 is AAC encoder. Then I can click, hold, and drag this onto my hard drive where it needs to go. And then now I have it on the file, the file in the folder on my external hard drive. My motto is think smarter, not harder. You do not want to make your life more difficult. Yes, you could go and try to find all the subfolders where iTunes keeps all the songs. Or something way easier is just going to the file, Show in Finder. Now we can quit iTunes because we've converted our song to the format we want. But this is how you can use iTunes to convert a song. Now we're going to add that song and make some audio adjustments. So we do have to import that song to our iTunes if we...
Sorry, I have a question. How do you know which one is the one that you...
It's usually the one that just showed up, so it's usually the bottom one. Okay. And you can always click on it and see. But when you say Show in Finder, it'll show you as well. And then you can always just see it's the MP4 version. And then click, hold, and drag that one. Good question. All right, so before I show you the music, I want to show you this one last thing with the clips. We said this is nonlinear editing. I can pick up a clip, I can move it to whatever location I want. That is why it's nonlinear editing. You do not have to edit in order. You just simply click on the clip and you can move it around. But I'm going to put them back to where they were. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and grab that audio file and we are going to put it in our software. I just realized I'd put it into my hard drive, so I'm just going to go with the AIFF. It's going to work. I just wanted to show you how you can convert it. You can use in and out points up here if I needed to only edit a certain portion of the song. You can use in and out points just like we did with video, with audio. And then to drag it to the timeline is just dragging this audio down here. So if you need to adjust and do in and out points, you can double click, load it in your source, and you can do in and out points just like you did with video, but you're going to want to click on the audio and drag the audio down. Me personally, I'm just going to drag the entire song here just so I have the whole thing for this tutorial. So you can also just simply click, hold, drag, and drop here, and I can use the trim tool, and now I can have the trim tool here. This is where that snapping comes into play like I talked about. Because I have snapping off, I'm going to have to guess where it ends with the video. But if I hit S, as in snapping, or hit this snap icon, now when I pull it, the audio will snap. You can see snap to the end of that video, and now I don't have to worry that it's not a precise end. Anyone have any problems getting the video? It will get faster in the tutorials, but usually we have like a lot of people who have never used this. You can zoom in and out on your timeline by this bar down here at the bottom. If you can also zoom in and out using plus key, that'll make things get taller, but this will zoom in. So if you pull your slider bar to the left, let's do that so we can kind of see the waveform, and I'll show you how to turn that on if yours isn't on. If your waveform is not showing up, you can go to this wrench tool and say show audio waveform. But this computer has it set up to where it will automatically do that. Mine at home does not. The other thing you need to do is we're going to expand our tracks. So let's all go to this wrench, click on it, and we're going to say expand all tracks. This allows you to see the audio waveforms a little bit larger, because sometimes your audio waveforms are not going to be that large based on the level that you recorded it at. If we press play, we can see that our audio meters are going to be moving now. It is hitting the red. What does hitting the red mean? It is too loud, it is peaking. It's going to give us some distortion. So one way to edit all of the audio level is if you look inside your audio clip, there's a line right here. That is going to allow me, if I click and hold, to pull it down. Now you can see it says negative 7.86 dB. That does not mean it will now automatically be at negative 7.6 dB on the audio meters. It means I am lowering it negative 7.6 dB from what it was originally. So that number you see is not what number it will go to, it is what you are subtracting. So now if I play it, I'm in the 6 and 12 range. The negative 6 and negative 12 dB range, I should probably stop this in case that messes up my recording. So the negative 6 and 12 dB range, decibel range, is what you want your loudest audio to be at generally. So if I'm putting out together a documentary or a short film, I need my spoken or word or my music or whatever is supposed to be my dominant audio between negative 6 and negative 12 dB. If I'm having my music underneath somebody talking, I'm probably going to have it way, way, way lower, maybe down here in the 30s, so that way I can hear the person talking and the music. So say in your first project you have nat sound, and you want to hear the nat sound and the music, I would probably lower the audio quite a bit. This infinity sign means you've turned it off. You don't want to do that. But I would have it lower, and then I would play it with the nat sound and see, can I still hear it? It's still hitting in the negative 18. That's too much. And we got a weird giggle. That's interesting. So I could keep dragging it down lower to try to make it go lower. But I don't want to go to that negative infinity because that means I'm going to have no audio. So I'll try to go to negative 33. Now you can see I'm in the 30 range, which this would probably be better if I had something louder above it. When you have two channels or two different tracks of audio like spoken word or nat sound and the music, like you might have for this next assignment, then you are going to want to play them to see if you can hear. If you do not want to adjust the whole audio, what can we do, those of you who've edited in Premiere before?
You set your little pinpoints.
You can do what are called keyframes. It's important to know how to do certain things in here, and it's also important to know sometimes the jargon, because keyframes transfers over into other software, or like when you're with your CTP, keyframes can be used in other applications and other devices. So I'm going to show you how to do keyframes with a pen tool. So if you look over here on your tool palette, you'll see there's a pen tool. This pen tool can be used to add points on the timeline, or excuse me, on your audio. And wherever these points are, if I pull up or down, you can see I can fade in or fade out. You have to have at least 2 points. If you just have 1 point or keyframe, now you got me saying points. You've trained me quickly. If you have these keyframes, what is a point though? I mean, it's literally a point.
You use a pen tool.
Yeah. You don't use the pen tool?
I mean, it's called the pen tool.
Yeah. This point, the pen tool, you'll notice that if I pull up or down, it'll get lower or louder. But you have to have two. You can't just have one because one means you'd still have the other line. I could add another point and pull it down so I can go and it'll fade here. Maybe I want it to go slower. I can then add another point and then have it go down here. So now it's going to ramp up and then it's going to go back down again. So these are just the absolute basics that you need to edit. We will definitely go into detail a little bit more. It's a lot to take in, so if you feel a little overwhelmed, you know, the tutorial will be there, and the more you practice editing, the better you'll be.